In this video, you'll learn how to create a new project and populate the project setup screen. Before we begin, let's pull up a project to get an idea of what we're going to be looking at. So this project, when we first pull it up, we come to the Project Center, and at the top of the Project Center screen, we see this box that shows the project name and the project ID number. We're going to be looking under the Setup menu at the Project Information page. We're going to be establishing a project ID, a project name, and some general project parameters that will guide the overall project. But first, we have to create the project. So in order to create a new project, we're going to go to the Projects page. We're going to create New Project by clicking the button in the top right corner of the screen, and the Project Information page will pull up. We need to populate these fields with the general conditions that will determine how the project is structured internally. First thing we need to do is give it a project ID number. This has to be unique. And you may want to give this a little bit of thought. I mean, you could just start off 1, 2, 3, 4 or A, B, C, D. Some people want to use the project ID number as sort of a coding or a structured system, say multifamily. You may want to start off MF 101, 102. I already have an MF 101, 102, so I'm going to make this one MF 103. This is going to be a multifamily. I may want to give it a name. I'm just going to make one up. And this will be Caris Development. That sounds too much like an entity name. So I'm going to call it Caris Apartments. Caris is the Greek word for grace. So Caris Apartment Project. And you may want to be more descriptive here. Address, I'm just going to skip through these because they are required. At least address 1 is required. Address 2 is not. 1, 2, 3, Any Street in good old Fort Worth, Texas. Okay, now development company. Every project is going to be developed by some company. Usually the development company is going to be different for every development. This is for liability purposes to sort of protect other developments. If something goes wrong with this one and it gets sued, usually there's a unique development company for each project. So even though the name of your company may be ABC Developers, you're probably going to establish a separate entity to produce this project. So we're going to choose one that we have set up before. We're going to use sample entity A. We're going to assign a project manager to this. It's going to be me. And this is going to be a commercial project. This is project type. The project template, we have a few templates in here. General commercial lease would be just like an office building or anything where you're going to get commercial lease contracts. But we have some specialty templates, multifamily housing being one, self-storage facility being another. This is multifamily, so we're going to choose multifamily here. An asset class, is this going to be top of the line, which would be Class A? Is this going to be a little older property but still pretty nice? That's going to be a Class B. Or is this in serious need of repair, which is going to be Class C? Well, we're going to do this from the ground up, so this is going to be a Class A. Now, a ground up is when you buy a piece of real estate and you build a brand new building on top of it. But you could also acquire a multifamily project, in which case it would still be a Class A, but it would be an acquisition instead of a ground up. So You just determine here what asset class it's going to be. Import master data, we're going to leave that blank for now. In a future video, we'll show you what this is all about. And then in waterfall settings, this is where we establish the disproportionate distribution type of profit sharing with the partners. If you've ever tried to set up a waterfall in Excel, you know how complex it can be. Proforma Plus, it's very, very simple. You simply define the number of hurdles that you're going to have. 3 to 5 is typical. I'm gonna set this one up with 3 hurdles. Now, here you have to be careful because the number of hurdles to add here is going to, if I put 3 here, it's going to add 3 down below. I want a total of 3. I already have 1. You can't have less than 1. So I'm going to add 2 more. So I'm going to change that to 2, hit the add button. I'm going to end up with 3 total hurdles in my waterfall distribution. Now, in a waterfall, you're going to have a preferred rate of return, or pref rate. And the way this works is that up to this first preferred rate of return, let's say 9%. The limited partner investors are going to get how much percentage of the distributions of the first 9% return rate? Well, if we have a typical 90% limited partner, 10% sponsor, usually this would be set up the same proportionate distribution that you have in your common equity, which we'll look at in a different video. So you put 90 here, and notice that this one changes to 10. This will always reflect 100%. These two together will always reflect 100%. So all you have to do to set up a waterfall in Proforma Plus is to establish the preferred rate of return for the limited partners, and the sponsor percentage will automatically adjust. So let's say from 9% up to 14%, the sponsor is going to get what's called a promote, which means a bigger share of the distributions. Once the limited partners have gotten 90% of the first 9% of earnings, we're going to promote the sponsor an additional 20%, which means the limited partners are going to get 20% less, or 70%, and the sponsor is going to get 30% of the profits after that. Now, in this simple 3-tiered structure, we're going to leave it at that, and we're going to leave the pref rate on the final hurdle blank. And in this particular project structure, we're going to split it 50-50. Anything over 14%, the limited partners and the sponsor are going to share 50-50. And that's all there is to it. That's as easy as, that's as hard as it gets. It's very easy to set up a disproportionate distribution in Proforma Plus. Now we have to set up some project tax rates. This box is required because we're going to estimate the value of the property upon exit. And depending on how you structure certain things, you may take an investment tax credit, you may take accelerated depreciation, which has to be recaptured, and all that factors into what your distribution is after tax, and before income tax, but after capital gains and straight line recapture tax. So we have to tell it what these numbers are so that it can calculate those adjustments to the sale price accordingly. So the investment tax credit, I'm going from memory, check with the irs.gov. I think it's 2%. Straight line recapture tax, I think, is 15%. What this means is if you take an accelerated depreciation, then you have to recapture anything that's in excess of straight line depreciation. Capital gains tax, currently, I think it's 20%. Estimated property tax valuation. This is for property tax, this is the estimated value of your property. If you don't know right now, just put something in. We can always come back and change this later. I'm going to put in, because I don't know, $1.5 million. What is the tax rate per $100 valuation? Something that is typical in this part of the country is $1.85 per 100. So if this property is indeed worth $1.5 million, and it's going to be worth a lot more than that, our annual property tax is only going to be $27,750. All right, now we're going to set up a project timeline. This is a schedule that we will introduce so that the code knows how long to stretch the calculations out. We're going to give it an anticipated start date for the project. Now, the anticipated start date typically is when you close either on the construction loan or the injection of the land. If you hold the land and you're putting it into the project, whatever date that you set for the official starting date of this project is what we're going to use. So I'm going to use October of 2024 as my anticipated start date. In this particular project, we're going to assume that we're buying a piece of property that we're going to then add value to. We're going to do some renovations on it. And so for the in-service date, we're going to also use October of 2024 because we're going to be, we've got existing tenants and we're going to be collecting leases from those tenants from the very beginning. So I'm going to put October of 2024 as the date that it's in service. Now, what the system keys off of this field for is when it begins calculating revenues and when it starts depreciating the property. The in-service date drives those two calculations. Whatever you put in as far as what your income stream is, which we'll do in another video, it begins calculating on the in-service date. And what you put in here as far as the value of the property, it starts depreciating it from the in-service date. The anticipated sale date is when it closes the project out. Now, typically in real estate, you're going to do a 5, 6, 7 year hold. We're going to do some simple math and make it 5 years. So we're going to put it in service in October of 2024, and we're going to assume that we're going to sell it in September of 2029. So it's going to be a 5 year hold. So we're going to skip forward to 2029 and put September of 2029. And notice now my operating assumptions field is populated. These boxes are populated based on the timeline that we've established here. It's going to ask what my vacancy and credit loss rate is going to be for the entire 6 year period. Now, the first year is a partial year. The 6th year is a partial year, and it knows that. So it's going to want to know for the very first year what is my vacancy rate and credit loss rate, and I can establish those year by year. Now we're going to assume in this particular project that we're going to have a 25% vacancy rate because we're going to take 25% of the units in this project out of service and not collect any rents on them because we're going to be renovating those apartments. So for the first 2 years, we're going to show a 25% vacancy rate, and after that, we're going to assume that we're going to start filling those up. So 25% vacancy years 1 and 2. Year 3, I'm going to show 10. Year 4, year 3 I'm going to show 15. Year 4 I'm going to show 10. Years 5 and 6 I'm going to be at a pretty standard 5%, 95% occupancy. Now the next row is the rental income escalation rate. The first year I'm going to leave that 0. What this is asking is, what do I anticipate rental prices going up by year? I can do this year by year. Nothing the first year. They're going to get charged the base rate year number 1. Year number 2, we're going to anticipate going up 3% to keep up with inflation. So if I see inflation coming down the road, I can increase this. Or if I see the market getting squeezed and supply dwindling, I can elevate these. Let's say in year 3 we expect a severe undersupply. So I could actually escalate my income prices by 5%, and then it's going to normalize so I can come back down. I can be very flexible with this escalator. The operating expense escalation rate does essentially the same thing, except it anticipates an inflation rate rather than the income escalation rate estimates fluctuations in pricing based on supply projections. And so the operating expense escalation rate is an anticipation of inflation. So if we leave this at a pretty standard 3%, of course we can go back and adjust it as necessary and recalculate the model. We can do it anytime we want to. This wants to know the lease commission rate on the units that we are selling. Now, if you have an in-house management company that you just pay a salary, then you can leave this 0. But if you're using a property manager and you pay them a percentage of all the rents that they sign up, then you put whatever you're paying them here. I'll use something fairly lowball like 3.5. Now the expected cost of sale has to do with what the expenses are of selling this at the end of the 6-year hold. I'm going to put a standard 6% cost of sale for brokers, commissions, and marketing, and etc. The depreciation method, we have 3 to choose from. The first one is a standard straight line depreciation. The second one uses modified accelerated cost recovery, which uses the sum of the year's digits method. This is modified accelerated cost recovery, or MACRS, using double declining balance. I'm going to keep it simple and just go with straight line. For residential property, it defaults to 27.5. We're going to ignore cost segregation right now. That'll be a separate video. We're going to save this. Once you save this, it's going to go through the process of building this project in its logic, and it's going to present you a project center screen with all zeros. From here, you can continue on the left side, starting at the top, going all the way down. We've completed the project information page. Now, if we want to click back on that and change any of these, we can. If you make a change, you have to click the Save button at the bottom of the screen or your changes will be lost. That's it for this video.